Good morning, friends. It's Bob again. We are exploring this idea of joining God in work already in progress and God drawing other people to himself. We started off by looking at this idea that God drew the Magi that we celebrate in this Advent, this season of Christmas time, where God is bringing people and drawing them to himself. Now, think about the Christmas story for a moment. So you've got in the story of Magi who are being drawn, they're pagans, they're being drawn by a star and by their ancient writings that somehow connect them, and God is drawing them through that means. The shepherds, God uses the angels and his glory, and they're simple men, and they are brought to Jesus in that way. Now, with the Jews, then the Magi on their journey there, they go to Jerusalem and they actually inquire, and Herod inquires, where is the Christ child supposed to be born? Well, God has actually promised this through scriptures and everything. And so there's another way that God is drawing signposts to himself. Signposts to himself. Would you say that with me? Signposts to himself. That God is drawing people and he's putting up signposts because he doesn't want people to get confused. He wants them to be drawn to himself, and he knows how to get the message across. Now, we have seen that God is using you and me to do this, and that we are, in fact, you are, in fact, a signpost, a part of that process of God drawing people to himself. It's beautiful, it's mysterious, it's clumsy, it's goofy, it's fraught with frustration. It's not one of those things where you just can dial it in and be perfect at it. Also, just as a caveat here, I'm not saying that you have to be an evangelist in this. I think that a lot of times when you're around an evangelist person that God has put evangelism in their heart as a gift, that they are driven to this. And typically, not always, but typically evangelist people are so aggressive in this that it makes all the rest of us that are not evangelists feel like, gosh, well, are we really just worthless here? Because we're really not doing anything meaningful. But this work of evangelism is so meaningful and so important. And that is how God has uniquely wired them. But God has uniquely wired all of us to be a part of the process, to be a part of the team, to be a part of his effort in bringing people to himself. You and I are signposts. That's what we are intended to be. Now, I said a couple of times ago that you and I need to tend the garden. That is to say, and I'm going to shift metaphors here for a second and say, when you have a garden in your backyard, let's say you've got carrots over here and peas over here, and you've got other fruit-bearing plants over here, and and vegetables over here. And each one of those plants needs a little bit of something different at different times. And you, as a skilled gardener, as you learn these things, you look over at the tomato plants and you realize, gosh, I got to get those up off the ground, because if I don't, then the pests will get to them. And so you get a lattice kind of going, and you get your tomatoes up off of the ground and that whole thing. You look at other things, and the potatoes, those are just fine. The carrots, those are fine, but they need a little bit more water. But the carrots don't need the same amount of water that the potatoes do, and the tomatoes actually need a little bit of a different kind of a attending to in that whole thing. And you just are observing different things as you do, then you give each plant what it needs on the timetable that it needs it. So when I say tend the garden, what I mean is that all of these people in your and my life, I'm looking outside my front window and I see that I have different neighbors, and all of those neighbors are in different places of being drawn to God. And in that respect, then, how do I participate? I tend the garden. I give what God is calling me to give in the moment when he's giving it. When I notice that there's something that I can actually contribute. When I notice that, I jump in and I contribute. And by contributing, I am becoming and being a signpost pointing to Jesus. And that doesn't mean I have to say, whoa, hey everyone, I'm a signpost pointing to Jesus. Sometimes it does mean that, but a lot of times it means that you are the embodiment of God's care in just profoundly practical ways. You meet a need that they have. You sit with them and you listen. You say nothing. You You buy them some groceries. You take care of them when they are sick. You help them with things that you're skilled at, and you give what you have to give. And in the midst of that whole thing, most of the time, people are like, "Why are you doing this?" And I think that it's a beautiful segue to be able to say to them, I do this because this is how I've been loved by God. And God wants you to know that He loves you this way too. And I so want you to know Him. And you don't have to jam it down their throat. That's a seed, it's a signpost. And you tend the garden, especially when you sacrifice something for someone. It has a very high value in a world that's very selfish. Dare I say, in this pandemic era that we're in, that when we get outside of ourselves and we start giving things away and we start sacrificing, it amplifies the message without us even saying anything. Tend the garden. Be a signpost that God is using to draw people to Himself. That's what God is saying to us on this Monday, this first Monday of 2021. Join me in following the Lord and being a signpost, and as He draws people to Himself in 2021. I love you. I'm praying for you. Thanks so much for joining me today. God bless you.